This is Robin Sosha, and I am going to do an overview of the present, past, and future tenses today, both in the simple form as well as the progressive or continuous forms with form and function. I want to do this today in part of the storytelling with marketing and commercials because the present tense, which is our first one that we're going to look at, uh, has a function of repetition, definitions, or facts. And so commercials and media love to sell us things as fact, even though it's an opinion. So a lot of times we see examples that are in the simple present. But let's first talk about repetition. So these are the ways that we use the simple present. Repetition can be every day. That's probably how you learned the simple present. I brush my teeth every day. But repetition can be more than that. It can be every week or every month or every year. So I eat pizza on Fridays. I fly home to visit family on the holidays or on vacation. Definitions and facts can overlap a little bit. A definition can be a dog has 4 legs, but that could also be a fact. And then, of course, facts are things that don't change. So, I live in Kansas. That is a fact that doesn't change. So you would keep it as simple present. Also, the earth revolves around the sun. Water boils at a certain temperature. Those are all simple present. What sometimes gets played with is in papers where we're writing, even though it's our opinion, we're writing like a fact. That's why we use simple present a lot of times. Or Avion, water keeps you young. Nike makes you run faster. Adidas helps you play soccer the best. So all of these are examples where commercials and media can sell you something. It's really an opinion, but they sell it like a fact. So remember that in English, a lot of times verbs, in other languages, you have an ending or a beginning that you can tell what the subject is, whether it's I or you or they. But in English, they look very similar to the infinitive, the to eat, to drink, to swim, right? So that's called a base form. So when you conjugate a verb in the affirmative in simple present, it's I eat, you eat, he eats, we eat, you eat, they eat, for example. Third person singular a lot of times in English is different. Remember that for pronunciation, sometimes we also need to add the ES, like watch becomes watches or wash becomes washes. But you don't want to just use the same because it's easy to remember, because then it sounds very broken. So, for example, I eat, you don't say he eat dinner. It would be he eats dinner with the S. So auxiliary is a helping verb. In English, we love helping verbs. We have helping verbs for negatives, for questions. We have it for the present tense, the past tense, the present perfect tense. We have them. So the most common is do. Now, do can still be a regular verb. It can still be used as a verb. I do the laundry. I do my homework. But in English, when we have questions or negatives, we conjugate the auxiliary. I do, you do, he does, we do, you do, they do. And then we don't conjugate two verbs, so we're using the base form of the verb. We're using that part of that infinitive, so as the main verb. So for example, he eats dinner or he doesn't eat dinner. So now, or does he eat dinner? And there's a pattern there. And if you can remember the pattern, then it's easier to remember the language rules. So it's auxiliary, subject, base form of verb for the questions. And then for negatives, it's subject, auxiliary, base form of verb. And this pattern also works for the simple past, but we'll repeat that in a moment. So remember, there's always exceptions in English. So when who or what is the subject, there's no auxiliary, there's no do. We also use third person singular. So who drives Mary to school would be one example, or what uses electricity. For example, my computer uses electricity. My computer is the subject. So when you need that information question, not a do question, not a yes or no question, but a who, what, where, when, how, why question, when who or what is the subject, no auxiliary is needed. Adverbs of frequency are pretty fundamental. This is learned in a lot of the lower levels. What's important to remember is the adverbs of frequency like never, seldom, rarely, sometimes, often, usually, always. Those come after the verb to be, but before action verbs. So for example, uh, I am always late would be after the verb to be. I always go to class on time, or I never go to class on time. That would be before the action verb. Let's move on. So present progressive. Present progressive is for a period of time. It's a longer action. So there's two flags. There's the verb to be, which is technically the auxiliary, and this shows the time, whether it's past or present. So I am, you are, he is, or I was, you were, he was. But that's about past progressive. Let's talk about present progressive. So you need that in addition to the base form in ing or the present participle, depending on what you learned. So I am walking, you are walking, he is walking, we are walking, you are walking, they are walking. This can be an action in progress, which is a lot of times when you first learn again, this is like I am studying right now is a key word. But the action in progress, the function, can oftentimes be something in the present time that you're not doing at that moment. So you can say, you know, I'm watching a Netflix series on my computer, but you're not doing that right now. You're studying. So it could be something for a period of time. So here's the formula. The verb to be indicates whether it's past or present, so you need to conjugate it. I am, you are, he is, we are, you are, they are, base form in ing. And remember, there are two types of verbs. There's action verbs, things you can see, like run, walk, write. And then there are things that you only feel. So the things you feel are called stative verbs, like, love, and hate. That's why McDonald's, when they say, I'm loving it, it's not grammatically correct. Why? Because stative verbs do not go in ing. What McDonald's is doing here is making I'm loving it into an action. Like I'm buying it, I'm eating it, I'm sharing it, I'm telling people about it. So they're making love more of an action of marketing. The simple past is a finished action, completely done in the past. It's a definite time. It's not like the present perfect, which is in another video, but it is a finished action. It uses the same pattern as the simple present. So for negatives and questions, you need the verb do, which is did, so that's easier because you have it all the way through. I did, you did, he did, we did, you did, they did, plus the base form. What's a little more complicated in the simple past is that in the affirmative, there's a lot of irregular verbs in English, like 300 of them. So you need to memorize all of those when you are doing the affirmative. But in negative, it's just the base form. Also, there's some pronunciation issues. Regular verbs in English in the past tense are ed, but sometimes they have different pronunciations, like talked, sounds like a T, but want and need is wanted, and needed, you hear the ed. So when a verb ends in a T or a D, you hear the ed. Lastly, there is a softer sound, like the D sound, when you say worn becomes warned. So here's your regular ed regular verbs ending, and watch your irregular verbs. Like eat, ate, sing, sang, run, ran, teach, taught. Same thing that we were just talking about. So the auxiliary for the simple past is did. The past progressive is just moving down the timeline, a longer action in the past. It's the verb to be. I was, you were, he was, we were, you were, they were, plus base form and ing. For future tenses, there are 3 formulas and they're all different uses. There's an undertone to the language. So let's talk about the future for a minute. The first one is only used for schedules. Now we play around with this a little bit. As a mom, I play around with it, like we're leaving in 5 minutes. But most of the time, schedules like planes and trains, we use the present tense or the present progressive. And so the plane leaves at 7 o'clock, we're using a time word to show the future verb tense in that. But again, we only use the present tenses in future form with time words when it has to do with a schedule, A lot of second language learners love to use will because will is so much easier than be going to. So it's will in base form. So I will go, you will go, he will go. Now it is future. Sometimes students will make a mistake where it's I will walk, you will walk, he will walks. There is no S on there. It's base form. If you need to remember that, keep in mind if you were to use I will be there, that's base form of the verb. It's part of the infinitive, right? So I will be, you will be, he will be, they will be. So you're using the base form of the verb. The way that we use it, though, is we use will for a promise. Most of the time, promises are in first person. You don't promise for other people. Will you marry me is a famous quote of most gentlemen or women that want to propose a lifetime of love, but they're asking for a promise. It can also be a quick reaction, so sometimes these can be confused. Quick reactions are often in contractions, so I'll help you, or I'll get it, or I'll get the door, I'll answer the phone. Also, predictions without evidence. Politics, whether, he'll win the election or it'll rain this evening. So sometimes we don't always know the answer. We also use it with will. But these are the most common ways. I always tell students promise and quick reaction. Be going, I like to think in thought groups. Thought groups are just really fast phrases that as you become more fluent, you just say them. And be going is one of those. So why we use the simple present conjugation, like I am going, he is going, we are going, with future, I don't know. English is a very silly language. However, when we use be going, just think of it like a thought group. So I am going to what? To eat, to drink, to swim. So this to is part of the infinitive. It is not a preposition. So if I wanted to say I am going to go to the mall, the I am going part is just talking about the future. It's the helping phrase that says, okay, this is going to be a future verb. So here's the function and application. This one is why a lot of second language learners sound so romantic because everything is a promise, like I will be there, I will help you. But no, really it's just a plan. So I'm going to help you later, or I'm going to be there later. And that's why native speakers are fluent with fluency, we use be going to more because it is not a promise. Most things in the future are simply plans. Also, prediction with evidence is something you can see. So there's a black cloud outside. It's going to rain. You see a woman pregnant. You don't say she will have a baby. That's a little odd. What you would probably say is she's going to have a baby. Future progressive is a little more complicated, but it shows a pattern of the language. So if you understand the future with will and be going to, future progressive is just for a period of time in the future. So you still need any progressive form needs the verb to be and ing. Always. Unless it is a stative verb, it gets put into the simple form. So future, you're going to need will, or I am going to, or he is going to, or we are going to, or they are going to, and then the verb to be, base form of the verb you want, the action you want, plus ing. So I'm going to be eating. I will be eating tonight. So here are the functions and the application. So I am going to be eating dinner with my aunts, or I will be eating dinner with my aunts later this week. It's for a period of time, a longer period of time in the future. So let's now talk about basic sentences, fundamental sentences in English. They are combining clause structures. Now, a clause always has a subject and a verb. A phrase is just a group of words. So we can combine these verb tenses to make longer sentences. But you don't want to have run-on sentences in your writing or even in your speaking. You want to have that pause, and that pause is a period. So a simple sentence has a subject, a verb, and an object. It tells you who or what. So I give flowers to my mother. So I give what to whom. So I have an indirect object and a direct object, but you have that object. If I just say I give, well, I give what? I give flowers, I give dirt, I give a house. What am I giving? I give money. What am I giving? So you need to think about completing that. Now you can have two subjects and one verb. You can have one subject and two verbs, but you need to have a complete thought. That simple sentence is considered an independent clause. When you have two independent clauses, that's called a compound sentence. But those two independent clauses that each have a subject and a verb need to be combined with fanboys. Fanboys is an acronym. In English, we love acronyms. This acronym stands for and, nor, but, or, yet, or so. All of these, when they join two independent clauses, you need a comma before them. So here's an example. I like ice cream, comma, and my boyfriend likes cake. Notice that I like is subject-verb agreement with a comma and is showing similarity. My boyfriend likes, notice this like, is a subject-verb agreement to my boyfriend. A complex sentence is an independent and dependent clause combined. So now you have an incomplete thought and a complete thought. The incomplete thought is called a dependent clause. It depends on the independent. Also, a dependent clause many times precedes like when, while, before, after. These are actually called adverbial clauses, but what's important to know is like if I said, when I go to the store, I can't put a period there. I would need a comma. If the dependent clause is first, I need a comma. If the dependent clause is second, I do not. So you can combine long and short actions. So when I was walking home, I dropped my cell phone. When I was shopping at the mall, I bought a shirt. So I have a longer action and a shorter action. I can also have simultaneous actions. While I was shopping at the mall, I was talking to my sister. It means the whole time I was shopping, I was talking. That's not impossible, for me at all. The last one, you can have sequence. So when I got to the mall, I bought a shirt, I ate lunch, then I left. So if you have simple past, simple past, simple past, that shows sequence of action. And that, my friends, the last one with future is you've got to remember that with your main clause is future, but your dependent clause is going to be simple present. So when I have money, I'm going to buy a hamburger or I'm going to buy a chicken sandwich. When I get out of class, I'm going to make dinner or I'm going to meet my friends. So I'm going to meet my friends when I finish class. It doesn't matter if the main clause or dependent clause are first or second. Just remember when you use future, your dependent clause is simple present. And that is, my friends, an overview of the present, past, and future tenses, both in progressive and simple forms, as well as form and function, how we use them and their formulas. And then a quick overview of the clause structures we use in English. There is another one, the complex compound sentence, but we'll talk about that later on.